Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, I wanted to just give my take on this Jermall Charlo fight because, with Anthony Joshua and Wilder, that's really the talk of boxing right now. And this card really got overlooked. And, I did watch it. My dad was live for it, so big shout out to my dad for holding it down and doing a hell of a job on the live. And not just for that fight, but the Joshua fight as well. He did a hell of a job by himself this weekend. So let's give my dad a round of applause and smash that like button and let my dad know in the comments how well he did during the lives this weekend. But I wanted to just talk about Jermall Charlo and his fight with Dennis Hogan because this fight was very intriguing to me when you consider the fact that Jermall Charlo is one of these middleweights that at the present moment the stock on him has dropped. Pretty much his whole middleweight title reign, his stock has progressively dropped as a fighter because he hasn't been knocking these guys out at 160 like he was 154. So they brought in Dennis Hogan. Dennis Hogan, a tough, awkward, tricky fighter who's not naturally a middleweight, but they dragged him up 154, and he fought him at 160. And fair play to Hogan. Hogan took this challenge, and he believed he could win. And, for the majority of this fight, he proved to be a really tough person to hit because one thing Dennis Hogan does really, really well is he's very good at changing his rhythm. He's very good at attacking from different angles. Probably my biggest criticism of Dennis Hogan's skill set as a fighter is that he doesn't have a consistent jab. And I believe if Dennis Hogan had a consistent jab, this fight would have been a lot better for him, and he probably could be a world. I'll tell you that like this: if Dennis Hogan had a jab, I would have no problem saying he's going to be a world champion. But because he lacks a consistent jab and he's very awkward, he likes to lead with his right hand and things like that, and he's not the biggest puncher in the world, I think he's going to have a hard time ever conquering that world championship level. Although, I would argue that, against Jaime Munguia, he was blatantly robbed in what could be the robbery of the year. So, that's neither here nor there. In this fight, Dennis Hogan showed the ability to walk Jermall Charlo into counters. He did it quite a few times. He would feint, he would take a step back, Charlo would overcommit on a jab, and then Hogan would throw left hooks and catch them coming in. But again, Hogan's not a big puncher, so Charlo was able to take these punches and continue pressing forward. Charlo, what he did really good in this fight against Dennis Hogan was the fact that he was able to press forward. He was able to land that jab and just really show how strong he was throughout the course of the entire fight. And you kind of knew, because the perception coming into this fight with Jermall Charlo and Dennis Hogan was that yes, Dennis Hogan is going to give Charlo some really good tough rounds. He's going to be hard to hit, but once Charlo touches him, he's going to really hurt him because of the strength advantage, how much stronger he is than a guy like Dennis Hogan. And that's what happened. It took Charlo, I would say, about 4 or 5 rounds to really hit this guy cleanly. But when he did, man, I mean, he toppled him over. He had this guy doing flips. This guy did flips, Dennis Hogan. And then in the 7th round, when he got the stoppage, Hogan was looking to counter. And Hogan was looking to really continue being a nuisance to Jermall Charlo. And then what wound up happening was Hogan went to counter. He dropped his right hand. And as he dropped his right hand, Jermall Charlo threw this really compact left hook and caught him right. I'm talking like right in the middle of his nose and his face. And scored another knockdown. And Dennis Hogan couldn't even walk straight. I mean, it was a hell of a left hook. So Jermall Charlo definitely showed his vulnerabilities throughout the course of this fight. But then he also showed some of his strengths as well. So I think Jermall Charlo is going to be a tough fight for anybody in the middleweight division. But I also believe that there's a couple of guys in the division that would definitely outclass this guy. And I want to just talk about this for a second because Jermall Charlo, in the post-fight press conference, he was talking all this big nonsense, saying that he'll fight anybody, he'll do this and he'll do that, and he was really sticking his chest out. And there was one name that he called out in particular, and that was Demetrius Andrade. And Demetrius Andrade is probably, in my opinion, and this is an unpopular opinion, but I think he's the best and most skilled American fighter in the world in the sport of boxing. He's the most skilled one, and when he gets the big fights to prove it, he will prove it and pass with flying colors. And I stand by those words. He said he wanted to fight Demetrius Andrade, and that's no problem. But then he accuses Demetrius Andrade of hiding behind a network and all this stuff, and saying that he's ducking when he's his own man, and he's lying to only promotions. But when all actuality, we know that Al Hammond is pulling the strings behind Jermall Charlo. So Demetrius Andrade actually came out and addressed this, and he said that if Charlo is really his own boss, then make one phone call and the fight can be done. And I'll actually read you guys the quotes verbatim so you can come to your own surmise. Here's what Demetrius Andrade said himself. He said, I quote, "It's funny, Charlo said that just weeks ago that he's willing to do a one-fight deal with his own because he's his own promoter, and now again today he says that he's his own boss with Lions Only Promotions. But now he needs me to go over there and fight him when I'm under contract and he knows it. It's not up to me. That's BS. If Charlo's really his own boss, he really wants this, then he needs to make one phone call and it's done. Eddie already publicly said weeks ago he would give Charlo a one-fight deal. What's the problem then? I'm available. Let's unify those belts in May and give the fans what they want to see finally. 2 undefeated world champions in their prime, not like these pretenders avoiding us. Let's put your belt against mine. Let's make it happen because it just so happens I'll be available too in May. If you're man enough to back up your talk, make that call and it's done." So there you go. Demetrius Andrade calling out Jermall Charlo, pretty much exposing the guy as a liar, because that's what he is. He's a liar. Because how are you gonna say that you're your own boss and you can do whatever you want, but then you're saying, oh well, I can't fight him because he's with another network? That's a contradicting statement. You see what I'm saying? And let's also remember, when Demetrius Andrade a couple years ago showed up to the press conference of a Jermall Charlo fight and was there and asked him a question, he said, "Oh, I'm not a matchmaker, bro. You gotta get in touch with your team. You gotta do this." He became a freaking a manager himself in that scenario. So he's been ducking Demetrius Andrade. They ducked Andrade at 154. They're ducking him now at 160. If he moved up to 168, I'm sure they duck him and move up to 175, because that's been the case his whole career. Because every fighter in the division knows that when it comes to boxing, when it comes to this thing we call a sweet science, being in that squared circle, that one of the most skilled technical fighters in the world is Demetrius "Boo Boo" Andrade. Long, rangy, dangerous, athletic, boxer, puncher in both hands. Great amateur pedigree. You know, he is a stylistic nightmare for anyone in the division. And I'll even go as far as to say that he is a stylistic just nightmare for Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo is someone who, yes, is very strong, he's very sturdy, and if he catches Demetrius Andrade, it's possible he can put his lights out. I don't put that past him, but he's someone where his punches are, they're very straightforward, very straightforward. And for a guy like Demetrius Andrade, that's just too basic. That's too basic. And he would pick those shots off. He would dictate the ring, the general. He would dictate the distance. He'd be the ring general. He'd use the ring. He'd counterpunch him, and if they fought, I would predict Demetrius Andrade brutally stopping him in the later rounds, like 9th round, 8th round, somewhere around there. Because, and it's not even a knock on Charlo. You guys know I respect Charlo. I always go out of my way to say that this guy can fight his ass off. He's a good fighter, but there's levels to boxing. And while Jermall Charlo can fight his ass off, Demetrius Andrade, every time he gets in the ring and he fights, pretty much with the exception of like 1 fight in his career or 2 fights in his career, every time he's ever been active in his career and he's had a good string of fights and a good rhythm going on in his career, this guy is boxing at the highest levels. He just has had a chance to prove it against the best fighters in the world, because unfortunately they don't want no smoke with him. So Jermall Charlo, I'm not from Missouri, I'm not from the Show Me State, but you gotta show me. You gotta show me that you want to fight this guy, because you don't want to fight him. Canelo definitely doesn't want to fight him. Golovkin definitely doesn't want to fight him. And it's a shame, because this guy deserves an opportunity. And it'd be one thing if this guy was just some American hype job who, had a padded record and had no title, has no sort of a cachet in the division. But this guy has clout. This guy has cachet. He's the WBO middleweight champion. He has a strap. So if you're someone who wants to become undisputed, if you want to be one face, one name, one champion, you have to come see this guy. And the reason these guys don't want to come see this guy is because, in his own way, Demetrius Andrade has what I call the Lomachenko factor, where he doesn't just beat you as a fighter, he embarrasses you. He absolutely embarrasses you. He makes you want to put your boxing gloves down. And I sincerely believe that if Jermall Charlo stepped up to this fight, that's what would happen. He would absolutely get outclassed, dominated, destroyed, outboxed, outthought, outfought, and he would really have his mind open up to how the levels in boxing. Because right now he's living in a false reality. He's a good fighter, yes. He's a damn good fighter. He's a capable fighter, but he's not on the level of a Demetrius "Boo Boo" Andrade. And truthfully speaking, if he really believed in himself as much as he said he believed in himself, he would have kept that same energy when Daniel Jacobs pulled up on him, and he would have fought Daniel Jacobs. And truthfully, I think he'd probably beat Daniel Jacobs. I think he would probably knock Daniel Jacobs out, but he never fought Daniel Jacobs, despite talking all that stuff, talking about, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And then when Daniel Jacobs pulled up on him, the energy was different. So Jermall Charlo, you gotta show us, man. You've knocked out Dennis Hogan. Fair play to you. You've gotten some good wins good wins against Brendan Adams and other solid fighters. But those guys, as good for as tricky and as awkward as a guy like Dennis Hogan or Brendan Adams was, they weren't the kind of fighters that could hurt you. They weren't the kind of fighters that were gonna give you anything to worry about in terms of power. So fight this guy Andrade, and I think it'll be a much different story. And you'll find out you're good. You're capable. You know. You can beat a lot of fighters, but he's not one of them. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think this guy, Jermall Charlo, really wants to fight Demetrius Andrade, or is he just ducking like most guys in the PBC are right now? Let me know in the comments down below. Take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me. But I'm just a kid from Dane. So until next time, take care, guys.